Shashi Tharoor is joining us on the phone line. Dr. Tharoor, first of all, this horrifying attack on Salman Rushdie, an attack on free speech, would you say, immediately?
Absolutely. I think it's an utter horror to see this happening to a writer. And what is worse is that, of course, Salman would have been assuming that after, it's been a good 30-odd years since 33 years since the original fatwa, that at least there would be no particular complication anymore, that people have adjusted. He was actually wandering around quite normally without security and so on. So it must have come as a terrible shock. I mean, I think for everyone who values freedom of expression and also values the sort of safety and sanctity of individuals, this is a terrible piece of news. And I'm really appalled that there are still people who believe that the answer to words is knives. The answer to words is other words, frankly, and if people don't like what he has to say, they can write and attack him with words. That they're entitled to do. This is really terrible.
Shashi Tharoor, this is Rishika here from the Delhi studio as well. The first thought that really comes to everyone is satanic verses. I mean, there are headlines across the world that now read satanic verses author attacked 3 decades after he wrote the book. I mean, it is presumptuous at the moment to believe that the attack is linked. He's always been very, very circumspect about the death threats against him, hasn't he? He's always been very dismissive about them.
No, I don't think he's been dismissive. He took it very seriously. He went into hiding for 2 or 3 years, as you know. He's written about that experience. He wasn't dismissive, but, every human being wants to lead a normal life. And he gradually was able, in the course of the 90s and after moving to New York, he was able to lead a normal life rather than being dogged by security all the time and so on. Clearly there were some people who were not reconciled to that and they were waiting for their moment. But he has been making a lot of public appearances. This is by no means his first appearance. As you said, it's now 33 years. So I would say for at least 20 of those 33 years, he's made many public appearances without any particular extra security. I've spoken at this venue that he was stabbed at the Chautauqua Festival. And it's an open stage, open air. It's a very popular literary festival. It's a place where all sorts of people come and throng, and there are no particular security arrangements made at that time. But it would have seemed to everybody that it's very unlikely that anything would happen. And certainly after all these years, when there hasn't actually been any attack on him for all these years, I think everyone had no reason to fear that something else would happen. Obviously, the police seem to have nabbed the assailant, to what the fellow says. But I have no doubt that it had to be linked to that, because that's the one thing for which some people have never forgiven Salman.
But Dr. Tharoor, we've seen recently in America a rise in gun crimes as well. Under these circumstances, people who are slightly controversial, for instance, Salman Rushdie, there should be more security around them. I mean, much as people would not like it, but has that become a reality now?
Well, I don't know, because very frankly, it cuts both ways. Security. Indian politicians may be used to wandering around with posses of security people. Most normal human beings would find that terribly intrusive and unfortunate. I know that already by the 90s, when Salman and I had lunch in New York, he would be walking down the street. He had no security around him, because as a human being, that's the way you want to live. You don't really want to be completely surrendering your freedom and autonomy to security people around you. And frankly, I think that that's probably the way he's been living for 25 years. So this is truly a shock. Are we now going to a world where every writer is going to need security? No, I think not. I think there was a specific sort of target drawn on Salman's back because of that particular book. I think that was unfortunately something that maybe we should never have allowed ourselves to be complacent about. And I certainly hope he's going to come out of this all right, and that he is being well looked after and he will heal. And as soon as he does that, I think he may now have to realize that he cannot afford to live without some modicum of security, that wherever he speaks at a public stage, there will have to be special arrangements made, at least at the venue, even if it's not that he is accompanied by security everywhere, that at each venue, each public place, where people could have access to him, he will need some sort of special arrangements. That can be done, and that will probably need to be done for him. But I don't think we've yet reached a stage where every writer or public figure needs to do this. Now, obviously, we're seeing a rise in incidents. We've seen the assassination in Japan of the former Japanese Prime Minister, in a country where only 6 people are murdered by gun violence in the course of the average year. To have a former Prime Minister killed was shocking. So I can see why people are immediately going to say everyone needs more security. But honestly, I don't think normal human beings want to live that way. And I think we do want to now have to take an objective measurement of what the security threat is and to whom there is a threat before we decide on things like enhancing security for everyone.
Right, Dr. Tharoor, also, Salman Rushdie, while he was on stage, there was a huge crowd, as we can see in those visuals, who were there to attend this lecture of his. In this public glare, when an author is attacked, help us understand what messages the attacker trying to send, because this is almost like terrorizing everyone there.
Yes and no. I think the truth is that this is going back to the sense of hurt or resentment or anger or all of those above that some Muslims felt about what Salman wrote, and some people clearly have not forgiven him. I'm sure it's linked to their desire to settle scores with him. But as I say, the answer to if he has written something you don't like, you have every right to attack him with words. You also have a right to ban him from certain countries or whatever, but you have no right to stab him or kill him or attack him. That's what's really sad, and that's why the fatwa was considered quite medieval by most of the civilized world, that you don't sentence somebody to death for a work of fiction. That makes no sense at all. But clearly there are some people in this world who have still been influenced by that kind of thing and who have now acted. I mean, one mustn't forget that in the years immediately after the fatwa, we had the Norwegian and Japanese translators both murdered. These were the translators of the book. They were murdered for translating his book by Islamist terrorists. So clearly, if the translators can be killed, the author was vulnerable, and that's why he had high security in those days. That is now eased up, and it's very sad to see that we probably have to go back, at least Salman will have to go back to security again.